Well, welcome to our little Zoom here. Photography at Oregon is sponsoring this, and we've invited Dan to come over and show his exhibit at the Emerald Arts Center is Headstrong, the Women of Rural Uganda, photographs by Dan Nelken. And each of the photographs is accompanied by a personal statement made by each of these women, a little bit about their life or their circumstance, which is, to me, what makes it such an incredibly powerful show. So, I'm sorry? Okay.
Oh, that was my dog barking.
Oh, you're okay. Hang on a second.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, no, I got two more coming in. I'm trying to host this thing at the same time, so be patient with me. Oh, and by the way, if you're not muted, please do so we don't have any distractions, but I think most of you are at this point. So just as an introduction, Dan Nelken, he was born in Tel Aviv, and after traveling extensively in his early life, he ended up in New York. We mentioned earlier his time in Chicago. And in New York, he received his undergraduate work at Pratt Institute. He also owned and operated a photographic studio where he produced advertising and promotional images for design firms, ad agencies, publishers, corporations. Sounds like he was a busy, high-end guy. But that work helped support his multi-year personal projects, which is what he indicated in his bio. He's also received a lot of awards and recognition for Headstrong in particular, this show that we're talking about today. And earlier for one called Till the Cows Come Home, it's county fair portraits. I would love to see that one as well. Your work has been published and exhibited widely and is in both public and private collections, so he's spread around pretty widely. His early exposure to other parts of the world is, and there are different languages in particular, is one of the things that helped him to develop an acute empathy, is what I refer to it as, for the ups and downs of other people and their cultures. And just working with Dan yesterday, I got that sense of his passionate connection to other people in their situations. And I think you'll pick that up from this as well. Naturally, as a result of this, he's also an accomplished documentary photographer. These portraits included in the Headstrong project reflect his passion for individuality and reveal the determination, powerful determination of women in a predominantly patriarchal society and suffering from a lot of oppression and issues. Anyway, I found the exhibit very powerful, not just because of those amazing portraits, but the stories that the women had to share. And I mentioned that a little bit earlier. And it's about their incredible struggles, their hopes and their dreams. And it's nice to see the human side of all of these photographs. That was one of the things that was so amazing for me about the show. Also, in terms of these stories, that could only be possible, number one, through Dan's ability to establish and create a sort of trust and a connection with these people, something he's very proud of, by the way. And it also required a translation help from Beatrice Lamawaka. Did I pronounce that right?
No, Lamawaka.
Okay. All right, and she's a successful international journalist, writer, researcher, and literary activist.
Yes, sure.
And she was born and raised in Gulu, Uganda, which is where these women are, I believe, most of them.
The majority of them, yes.
Right, and she's also worked with international humanitarian agencies in Italy and Sudan, so she's definitely on top of that aspect of this show. And she's also held many leadership positions and published short stories and poetry in many anthologies. So it's an incredible combination of artists that put this show together, and I'm very proud to be able to show this to you all and to have Dan here to talk. So I'm going to let it go at that and let you take it over, Dan.
Well, thank you, Michael, for the introduction. Sure. And thank you all for joining me today. I would like to take a moment just to
Your sound's off, Dan.
There you go. Start.
Okay, let me start again then. Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for the introduction, and thank you all for joining me today. I would like to take this moment to thank the Emerald Arts Center for hosting this exhibition, and especially to thank Susie Morel, Guy Weiss, George Beltran for the great looking poster, as well as Patrick Playa for the great matting job, and Paul Knevel for hanging the show, and for the effort that was required to get the show up and running in a timely and safe manner. I really wish I could be with you, but we're living in the time of COVID, unfortunately. And thank you for spending part of Valentine's Day with me. I look forward to answering any of the questions you have at the end of my presentation. And I'm sure that some of you are wondering, how did someone who has lived in New York City for most of his life end up going to Uganda 4 times in a 3-year period to do a portrait project? In late 2016, my wife, Adele, was looking to pivot from corporate world into a nonprofit world. Our friend Sandra Washburn, who had founded an NGO in Uganda called Voices and Pearls Uganda, asked both of us if we would consider volunteering for 2 weeks in Gulu, Uganda. Oysters and Pearls' mission was to employ college-age and technology-experienced Ugandans to teach and inspire young students so that they can go on and teach others those computer skills. The agenda includes teaching computer skills to blind and sighted high school students as well. For sighted students, the Tech Camp in 2017 offered advanced classes in robotics, gaming, animation, software development, and prototyping. Adele was asked to teach critical thinking to the blind students, and I was asked to take photographs of all the school activities. We said yes to Sandra, even though we had never been to Uganda, or really knew what we might be getting ourselves into. First of all, we thought we might be able to do some good, and besides, it was going to be an adventure. Before I talk about the portraits, I want to share a few facts about Uganda. If you are unfamiliar with the country, I hope this can provide some context or backdrop to my work. Uganda is a landlocked country in East Africa, bordered by 5 countries: Kenya, South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Rwanda, and Tanzania. It is home to the largest lake in Africa, Lake Victoria, and also lays claim to the source of the Nile near Jinja. Before I go any further, I just want to make sure, are you seeing the map of Uganda on the screen? Yes?
Yes,
Thank you. Want to make sure it's all working. Significantly, Uganda has one of the fastest growing populations in the world. The median age of a Ugandan is 15.2 years old. Think about that. The median age of a US citizen is 38.1 years old. That of an Egyptian, 24.6 years old. A South African, 27.6 years old. That's a lot of young people with a lot of pent-up energy and very little prospect of finding meaningful jobs in a country whose infrastructure lags behind that of some of its neighbors. And who do you think will bear the responsibility of supporting and caring for these young people? It's the women. Now,
Duh.
I'm sorry. Now getting back to the geography of Uganda. Its population is about 45 million, made up of dozens of ethnic groups. English is the official language, since Uganda was a protectorate of Great Britain till 1962. And Christianity, which is practiced by more than 70% of the population, helped unite these diverse people. Kampala, the capital city, is also the largest, with a population of over 3,300,000 people. One of the most notable and tragic episodes for modern Uganda has been the war in the north led by Joseph Kony and the Lord's Resistance Army, or otherwise known as the LRA. It began in 1987 and continues to this day, even if its base has moved to the Congo. The LRA kidnapped and abused both boys and girls and indoctrinated them into guerrilla warfare, as well as brutally murdering many of the children's parents. I mention this because the war directly impacted several of the women that I photographed. 3 of the women whose portraits are in the Emerald Art Center exhibit talk about the kidnapping experiences and their stories.
You're on mute again.
I'm on
Okay,
mute.
hang on.
Okay,
I don't know why.
I
Okay.
don't know why, but okay.
Are you hearing?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
Hear you before too.
thank, at what point did you not hear me? Hello?
I always heard you. There was no break.
Oh, there was no break. Okay, thank you. Okay, naturally, this trauma still affects the adult population in the north, many of whom were captured or witnessed the brutality of the LRA. Now the background continues. In January of 2017, we landed in Entebbe and stayed overnight in Kampala before our 6-hour journey over one of the few paved roads in Uganda, across the Nile and into the North to Gulu, the largest city in the north with a population of over 152,000 people. And can we move to the photographs? That's it. Next one, please. Thank you. So the following photographs were taken on our way to Gulu. And it was one of the first cultural surprises that both of us had, seeing that all the commercial activity in any town or village happened along the roadsides. From, as you can see, structures to buildings which had shops and people setting up impromptu stands to sell the produce that they had and other products. So we have arrived to Gulu. Where we started was at the tech camp, which was at Gulu High School, which is a boarding school. The students came from all over Uganda to attend. Basic meals were included, but the students had to bring their own mattresses, and they had to pay a minimum fee to attend. The fee was more an incentive to ensure that only serious students came. Classes were long, and students often had to share computers. But all the students were motivated to learn, since they knew how special this opportunity was for them. I photographed all the classes, all the events, and taught cell phone photography classes that resulted in a final exhibit. In my spare time, I would explore the campus. And one of my favorite places to visit was the kitchen. Before I go into that, this last group portrait is all the teachers that participated in Oysters and Pearls Uganda during that tech camp. You can spot us because we're just about the only white people there. So as I said, my favorite place to visit was the kitchen. There were 6 women who prepared the daily meals for the 150 plus student body and faculty. They cooked outdoors in enormous cauldrons over open fires. I had never seen anything like that before. They did everything by hand, cutting potatoes, kava, vegetables, cleaning the pots and pans, gathering and chopping firewood. I was so impressed by what they were doing that I asked them if I could take their photos. And to my delight, they agreed. One of the Oysters and Pearls staff members, Emmanuel, known as Emma, asked me if he could assist me. He had a used camera and wanted to be a photographer. I was happy to have him along. After the first week, when I had some available time outside my volunteer work, I wanted to expand my photography outside the school. I thought I might take portraits of working Ugandan women, similar to the kitchen staff. I knew it would be next to impossible as a Western male to approach a woman randomly and asked if I could take their photo. So I asked Emma to help me in advising a protocol to accomplish this. We agreed that I would compensate any potential model for her time in exchange for allowing me to take her photograph. Emma would explain my intentions. Some were skeptical, others agreed. And our first test was the main market in Gulu. This system seemed to work. Emma was young, Ugandan, and persuasive, and the barter exchange of some money for their time was appealing. This went on for a couple of days. I was excited by my first images in the market. I loved how the women organized their goods and the graphic quality of their presentation. I was less sure about the portraitures. When I got back to New York and downloaded my photographs, I was disappointed. I was actually really disappointed. The women just seemed lost in their surroundings. They didn't seem engaged at all. The photos remained on my hard drive. Adele and I agreed to return to Gulu in January of 2018 and work with Sandra and the Oysters and Pearl team again. This would also give me a chance to experiment further with my portrait work. I prepared for this next portrait venture by trying to figure out how I could improve my portraits. I was certain of a couple of things. I didn't want to isolate the women from their environment the way Avedon or Penn had done with some of their iconic images, because I felt strongly that the women's environment was an integral part of who they were. Yet the women seemed to be lost in their surroundings in my initial photographs. One day, while walking past a restaurant in Greenwich Village that had lace curtains on its window, I realized they provided the semi-transparency that I was seeking. I suddenly remembered that in Uganda, all hotels provide mosquito netting to surround the beds. It was my eureka moment. Mosquito netting. It was inexpensive, easily transportable, semi-transparent, and had a symbolic meaning within the country. I returned in 2018. I bought 2 tall light stands, a crossbar, clamps, and a 5 by 8 foot wide backdrop of mosquito netting. Before I set out in 2018, I also realized that if I hoped to exhibit these images, I would need to have the women's consent for me to use their photographs for artistic, not commercial reasons. This required them to sign a model release. For me, this consent was more than just a reason for taking a portrait. I also wanted to know more about the women that I was photographing, including details about their lives. How old were they? How long had they been selling in the market or working in the quarry? How much did they earn on an average day? Did they have children? I decided to add those questions to the consent. This was my first real attempt to become more engaged with the women as I photographed them. To accomplish that, I wanted the women to look directly at me. It was the power of their gaze and the collaboration with me. I wanted them to take direct ownership of their portrait by deciding how they were going to pose, as well as how they would hold their tools or vegetable basket. I was hoping that by having the woman looking directly at the viewer, it would allow the viewer, if they want to engage with the subject in a meaningful way. It might even make the viewer think about his or own assumptions about the woman they were looking at. Emma worked with me again. This time, my request that he hire 2 women to assist us when approaching our potential subjects. Daphne and Juliet joined our team. In the late afternoon, after my oysters and pearl classes were finished for the day, we would avail ourselves of the afternoon light. The 4 of us returned to the same market we had visited the previous year. After receiving permission from the manager and paying him a fee to set up at the outskirts of the market. Excuse me, while I take a sip of water. The first day was a bit shaky. In the beginning, when word got around we were paying to photograph women to have the portraits taken. We were besieged by dozens of women who all wanted to be first. It created such a commotion that I thought I would need to abandon this project because of the crush. I asked Daphne to make a list of the women who wanted to be photographed, and that worked. I photographed all the women on the list, asking for consent in exchange for payment. Every woman who wanted to be photographed would be. Luckily, that seemed to work. Going back to the quarry, we had a similar experience as the market, but were better prepared and organized, and the photo sessions went smoothly. Daphne handled the interviews with the women and collected their consent forms. Back in New York, I finally felt that these portraits were getting close to what I wanted to achieve. To portray the women with the dignity and self-assurance they possess. I felt those formal natural light images were among the most powerful I had taken in quite a number of years. I decided to return 8 months later in July of 2018 to avoid the rainy season and continue to make more portraitures. We assembled the crew and returned to the market in Gulu and Laebi, as well as the quarry where I photographed many women and setups. Adele joined us and agreed to be our videographer. Hold on for a second.
No, it's okay. I don't-
Okay.
Just a little
Okay.
lost.
At the end of this trip, I was very happy with the portraits. But for the first time in my career, I felt that there was something missing. The portraits and titles alone did not seem to do the women justice. I had often been impressed by their sense of humor and dignity as we interacted while taking the portrait. I knew that they had a story to tell, a story that I felt needed to be told. This was not something I could easily do by myself in the best of circumstances. I knew that as an American white male, I would not be trusted, no matter how straightforward my intentions might be. I felt I needed to work with a professional female Ugandan writer to continue with this project. My intention was to ask the writer to partner with me, come on the shoots and interview the women I photographed about their work and their expectations and gather their personal stories. This would provide a keen East African female perspective to the project. We're taking a pause here.
That's-
Okay, you sure? After several discussions with authors, Beatrice Lamarco, who was raised in the north of Uganda, had an international reputation as a writer, agreed to join the project. When Adele and I returned for the fourth time in December of 2019, we decided to expand the project to include other locations. We also thought to broaden the scope to include professional women as well. Excuse me, can I have the group shot, please?
Sure.
Please. So over there to the left is Beatrice, and followed by Daphne, of course me, Emma, and Juliet, in terms of one of our locations, the mechanic. With the help of another Ugandan-based NGO, the Soul Foundation, which provided prenatal and maternal care, family planning, job training, and sponsors girls' education, we expanded to Jinja. Soul also operates one of the first female-owned fish farms on the River Nile, a profession historically run by men. Beatrice met us in Jinja, and for the next 2 weeks, we'll work together to gather stories in central and northern Uganda. After every portrait, we sat down and interviewed the sitters. We even located sitters from the 2018 shoot to interview them. All women were paid for their time to be photographed and additionally to share their stories. Some were reluctant and evasive, which was not unanticipated, but Beatrice was able to have them share more directly than any of the rest of us could. When we returned to our usual spots in Gulu and Laebi, I bought dozens of photographs of the women I previously photographed a year earlier to hand out. The women were incredibly grateful. Some told me that they've never had a photograph of themselves before. As Agnes, the market manager at Liabi Market, told me, we didn't think you would be coming back. No one did. No one ever does. To this day, this moves me. Our plans to return in 2020 to complete this series were sidetracked, as were everybody else's plans because of COVID. Uganda went into complete lockdown, and its borders and airport were closed till the end of 2020. Thankfully, their border lockdown seemed to minimize the damage the virus was able to do. We stay in touch with Beatrice through social media and text. We hope to return later this year. There are additional women we want to interview and portraits we want to take. But I'm grateful for the ones I have, for the enormous cooperation and good nature of the women whose portraits I have shared with you at the Emerald Arts Center, and for the generosity of many of the NGO community who have helped Uganda keep its head above water during these uncertain times. What started out as a portrait and art project has evolved into a humanitarian one as well, which is why I would like to let you know that a percentage of the sale of the HeadStrong photographs will be donated to the Soul Foundation for the program that sponsors girls' education. And before I answer your questions, I just want to take several seconds to give a big, loving shout out to Adele, not only for the production skill that contributed to this presentation, but if it wasn't for her marketing skills, technical know-how, intellectual support, as well as her faith in me, there's just no way I would have got this far. Thank you. Thank you for listening. I hope I can answer any questions now.
So thank you, Dan. That was an incredible presentation, and the
Oh, thank you.
photographs were great. I wish that we all could have read some of those stories online here, but you'll have to go to the actual exhibit to do that.
Or you can go to my website
Oh,
and you
yes.
can read the stories there.
That's
Yeah,
true.
there's a tab on the website called Her Stories, or you can click onto the image of the women and the stories will pop up.
Okay, good. So we're
Put some
the
hands
question
up.
and answers. I can see everybody, and I can see that there's a couple that aren't muted. There's one. Barbara's all excited to start this out. I will try to keep an eye open for those of you that wish to say something so we don't get a lot of crosstalk. But let's start with Barbara here. Go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you, Dan. I did get to go to the Emerald Arts Center and see the photos and read the stories. A couple of things I noticed. No, none of the women, I'm going to assume that you have more images of women than you could exhibit. You know, maybe you'll do a second round, which would be fantastic. But I noticed none of the women were really smiling. The two of them, a sort of, you know, where the lips went, you know, more in the up position. So that's one question. The other one is, you know, about the fees. Considering that they are really stuck with these educational fees, which if you don't have the money, you don't advance. And I just was very brokenhearted, and yet they still hold some sort of hope out that at some point they will make it's something that they're interested in.
No,
So,
I listen, I agree with you. When I read the stories, I was really surprised by how school fees prevented so many of the women to continue their education, those that wanted to advance and could not. I mean, there's a 10-year-old girl who's working on the weekends in the quarry so she can make her school fees. On the other hand, there are times when her mother borrows money from her that she's earned because she's got to make ends meet at that end. So it's a difficult because the education will allow you to move up into jobs that would break out of the manual labor that they're in, and yet because of the educational system in Uganda, it just makes it very difficult to do that.
There's no hope of, I mean, they were a British colony.
That's right.
There's no hope of them switching into a different system. There's not enough revenue for them to have more of a public school, educate, a public school system.
Well, first of all, they were protectorate. They were never a colony. They were protectorate. Believe it or not, they take that very seriously, that they were never colonized. So for them,
Right.
they're very proud of that particular fact. And I just don't know, which is, again, the Soul Foundation, one of the things that they do is that they sponsor girls, but they make sure that the parents pay at least half of the school fees so that the parents are involved, with their children's education and not take advantage of the situation, which I think is a wonderful way of doing that.
I'll let someone else go.
Mary, you had your hand up originally. Did you have something you'd like to share or question? Mary over
Me?
here?
Me?
No, the Mary over to the, I'm not sure where you
Mary.
are. There, that you, yes. No? Okay, Myrna?
Myrna, I would like to just say hi
Hi, Myrna.
to a lot of old friends. And I really don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you for, as well as I know you and have spoken to both you and Adele, I never got into your life at that moment. And I really appreciate your taking us to share some of your insights and your talent and the way you thought through the whole process and taking us to a place we wouldn't probably get to be. I've been to Africa, but never that part. And I love the people. So I connect to that part of it. And I thank you for allowing us in with you.
Well, Myrna, it is really great to see you. And as you know, if it wasn't for Bob, your husband, I never would have been introduced to county fairs. And the whole project of, the whole county fair project was really because your husband insisted that I go to see the Delaware County Fair.
Well, I love you both. So thanks.
Thank you.
So Susie, you are not muted. Did you want to say something, Susie Morell?
Yes,
ahead.
yes, I wanted to say hi, Dan. And
Hello.
your show looks fantastic. And we poured over all the biographical information and just really soaked it in. And I really wanted to say kudos to you. You've really allowed the women to present themselves as they wish to be seen. They're very ennoblizing portraits. And they remind me a lot of, the whole trend in image making that Deanne Arbus was given credit for starting of confrontational realism. And, their lives, these women's lives are really hard. They're living in very impoverished conditions. And of course, they're going to be apprehensive about a white American male who they know has a lot of money compared to them. And what are your intentions, etc. And I think that, by going back, you really prove to them that your intentions were pure and that this was an art project that would really bring awareness about their situation. And I wonder also, just technically speaking, how much are the school fees for these kids?
I don't
How much
have,
are the school fees?
you know what?
Mm.
I don't know. For us, it
Mhm.
would seem like spare change.
Yes.
it is probably, whatever number I would give you would be a guess on my part.
Mhm.
But it's not just the school fees, because like the British school system, there's uniforms and they have to pay for their books as well. So books are not even
Yes.
provided. So,
Mhm.
yeah, everything is a fee.
Yes. And there's just so little opportunity to make money there, period.
Evidently so. A lot of like a lot of the people are self-reliant because they have gardens. They sell the produce that they have to make ends meet. Others, like I said, what fascinated me in the quarry was it was all women. The only men in the quarry are those that break the stone off the side of the mountain and sell it to the women to break.
Mm.
You know, so it's on the one hand, it's a steady income. They know that the gravel is needed, that they can earn income, as opposed to, eh, let's say, selling produce or not having it because, you know, your harvest hasn't arrived yet. So it's really an interesting phenomena for me in terms of experiencing it.
Okay, so Carol and Andrea both are off the mute. I think, Andrea, you got your hand up. You're excited. So why don't you go ahead and take
Oh,
it?
hi, thanks, thank you. Hi, Adele. Hi, Dan. I love you both, and can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, and you know I love these images. I love these images. My question is, you had just said that you're, obviously this has grown for you into a humanitarian endeavor beyond the photographs. Have you guys given thought, Dan, to how maybe you're going to expand your work there a little bit, such that the people might want to, like me, like other people here, might want to support what you do in a more expansive way when you go back? Have you thought about it? I'm sure Adele has.
This is the reason why we are working with the NGOs. We, as individuals, not having our feet on the ground in Uganda 24/7, the only way we can do good is really by working with the NGOs that like the Soul Foundation and Oysters and Pearls Uganda.
So do you,
Yeah, go ahead.
no,
I'm
I was
sorry.
just, so are there ways that you know what they need, that people who support your work can support that foundation also in other ways, kind of like expanding the whole thing, or am I
Yeah,
making sense?
yeah, you're making sense. And
Okay.
I would look, this Soul Foundation, which originally started dealing with prenatal care and maternity care for Ugandan women. This is a whole story in regards to hospitals are, you've got to bring your own sheets, your own towels, your own bedpans to the hospital. That isn't even, especially in the rural areas where hospitals exist. So the Soul Foundation has tried to do everything that they can to make the women, the pregnant women, the expectant mothers, not only survive giving birth, but their children to give birth, to survive birth itself. And most of it really is financial. Let's face it, so that they can afford, they want to afford the various supplies that they need to be able to afford to hire the teachers, the right people to be able, to help them and to expand their program.
Right.
But again, Soul is based in Uganda, and it was just great working with the people there who were, even though it's founded by an American in New York, a family, because their daughter saw the need and decided that they needed, that the family could help and set up this foundation. And I am getting a note on the side.
Oh, from a-
Said it's grassroots, community-based. Like you need the input from the community about what they want. It's so often in the nonprofit INGO world, people come in with ideas to plop in to a community and it doesn't work because you have to be on the ground there with the people at the quarry, for example, who say really what they want. So we may think they need daycare because the kids are running around barefoot. It's you know, shards go into their eyes, etc. But they actually may not want the kids to be in daycare there, or they may want them to be in daycare at the location. So an error that some people make is, I'm going to come in and fix this with either money or with this idea. But what happens is it really has to be community-based and raised, of which the international money flow needs to be there, but it has to absolutely support and help grow that from within.
Got it. Thank you. It's so moving, Dan. Your work is so moving. Beautiful.
Thank you so
Nice
much.
work. So Patricia, I see you waving your hand. Before I pick you up here, Carol Weber has had herself unmuted. Are you prepared to say or ask a question?
Yes.
It's
Okay, go
Michelle.
ahead. You'll get it next, Patricia.
Okay. I'll be talking very much about the philosophy of everything. But being a photographer, I have some technical questions to my friend, the photographer. Now, all your pictures are of women. The subject is woman. Therefore, the picture of woman. Did you have any problem with a boyfriend, husband, father, whatever, objecting to you taking the pictures? Did you have a problem with the male population?
None whatsoever.
Thank you for your short
First of
answer.
all, the men were not around. The men were in the market, the men are not around. In the quarry, the men are not around. When we dealt with midwives, the men were not around. When we photographed women who at the tech camp, or women that had their own business, there were no men around. It seems like the women do all the work in Uganda. I swear to it.
So what do the men do?
What the men do? Okay, the majority of men will be boater drivers, which is motorcycle drivers, which is the way the majority of people travel. It's the equivalent to your taxi. So the boater drivers will transport bananas, pineapples, bunches, animals on the back of the motorcycle. They will take on people. They will take on whole families. You know, I've seen one area in which on the back of a boat was a 10-foot wide door, glass door that the guy was going through traffic. So that's one profession men have. The other profession that men have is working in the market, lifting heavy bags of produce, basically their strength. Men can be in construction or be mechanics, even though I photographed a woman who was a mechanic. I photographed a woman who was a boater driver. But all of them experience some sort of, shall we say, prejudice till they, in terms of trying to become either a boater driver or mechanic. But once they showed that that they could do it, the men respected them for it.
Is it a matriarchal society or patriarchal society?
Like a patriarchal society. It's still a patriarchal society. Women, if I'm in a marriage, the man rules 90% of the time. Statistically speaking, you know, having done research, the majority of women feel that it's appropriate for the man to control the money. It's appropriate for the man to make the decisions within the family.
Yeah. Carol asked me if I will move there. No.
That's a good answer.
Thank you. Thank you.
welcome.
One addition to his comment about men, you did say that the men were the ones that were knocking the blocks of rock off the quarry walls. Is that correct? So they were there, right?
I'm sorry, what?
So the men that were knocking the rocks off the quarry wall were there, right? Working with the
Yeah,
women?
but they were a distance away. The quarry itself is on a plateau where the women are working, breaking off the rocks. And then there is like a valley that, because they've been eliminating part of the, in which the men are working, and then the men bring it up to the plateau, sell it to the women, then go back down again. I mean, I never interacted with them at all because they were always at a far away.
So they really weren't there a part of that.
No, no. Or the only other men were the ones who were driving the trucks at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon to, so that the trucks could be loaded with gravel.
Okay.
That was it.
Okay, Patricia, now it's your turn.
Well, I'm actually Russell, husband of Patricia,
Oh, okay. Sorry, Russell.
but she's listening.
Okay.
Couple of things. First about the photographs, brilliant, Dan. And my favorite color is orange. I believe I might enjoy going to Uganda. And about the composition of the photographs, the color, absolutely brilliant. Lots of natural light too. So the colors were just exploding in the clothing and the buildings and etc. Was that something you really truly wanted to accentuate, or you had no choice because it was everywhere, right?
You had no choice. The dirt, the ground, the earth is all red through most of Uganda, and when it rains, everything is covered in that red dirt. I've still not. 2 years later, I still cannot get it off some of my pants. You know, it's so embedded. It's so iron rich, and the women love color. You know, it's African fabrics. It's a combination of, look, for instance, the woman with the sweet potato vines on her head wearing the pink t-shirt. That I would say some NGO gave that to her. There are women who sell used clothing. And the women gravitate to bright colors. And thank goodness, you know, it's part of their culture, it's part of their sense of aesthetics, and it just enhanced the photographs. I was very grateful for that.
One more little thing.
Sure.
Patricia and I have traveled in the East, and I remember specifically walking in Cambodia. And in the streets, the people were walking around alongside cows and chickens and pigs and just, and the point I want to make and ask about is there, it seemed like everyone was at peace with a very simple life. You didn't see the hustle and bustle of people running in and out of stores and everyone conscious like we are in the USA of, oh, that store's closed now, they're not making money, I've got to go make money. And it's all about making money and having a busy life. Well, there they had a simple life. And I get the sense that maybe Uganda might be the same way. Did you get a sense of peace within the people of living a simple life and a simple culture?
No, I did not. I don't think that the circumstances in Uganda between the government corruption that goes on and the hardships that a lot of the people have to endure does not make it emotionally, I think, a sense of serenity or simplicity. If there is a simplicity, it's because there are so few options available to you. Yeah.
Great work, Dan. Great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the comment I had was that their simple life is more like a life of survival. You know, it might appear simple, but survival is pretty focused, and that might be what you think.
Very well said. Yeah, very
Yeah.
well said, Michael.
So, okay, Barbara, go ahead. I had a question too, but I can wait a little while. You go ahead, Barbara. You'll have to unmute yourself. There you
Dan,
go.
just going back to what I originally asked, I guess I didn't use a question tone of voice. How did you choose which photos to use for the exhibit? And my other question is, what is, if any, is the residue, what's left from Idi Amin's reign of power and of course the more current Lord's Resistance Army? And your equipment, what did you use? How did you determine how you were going to shoot?
Okay, that's about 3 questions. Let's
Yeah,
see.
that's about,
I'll deal with the simple ones first.
okay.
Originally, on my previous long-term project, which was Connie Fair Portraits, I had used a Hasselblad with film. And because of the original work that Sandra Washburn at Oysters and Pearls wanted me to do, I was shooting 35 millimeter. But so that I brought my Hasselblad along, you know, to take some personal shots, but basically it was all 35 millimeter. When I went back the second time, I bought my Hasselblad. When I decided, okay, this was going to be the mosquito netting, I bought back both my 35 millimeter Sony and my Hasselblad. And the Hasselblad, to my chagrin, just did not work. It for whatever reason, I was not getting what I wanted with the Hasselblad. So because I would shoot both in the beginning the Hasselblad and then the 35 millimeter, and became 35. I mean, I'm shooting, to get into the technical, I'm shooting with a 90 millimeter Sony lens. Because I wanted, you know, the backdrop to be slightly out of focus as well as coming through. The Idi Amin, you really got Museveni. The president has been there for 36 years. 70. And he keeps changing the Constitution so that he can have another term I think it's a 6-year term. And recently in January, they had elections and it was full of corruption and house arrest of Bobby Wine, who was the opposition. So the corruption just continues, and which is, you know, truly unfortunate. You also have China coming into the country to build infrastructure. But the interesting thing is with the infrastructure was that, for instance, the biggest problem is roads, getting good quality roads, which when we first went there barely existed. A lot of the roads would erode, and it was like a washboard, driving over a washboard. So you've got a lot of things happening. You've got a lot of things happening in the country in which the president controls, you know, what exactly is going on. And I think corruption, like the way it's in India and a lot of other countries, is just systemic throughout the culture. And one of the things that I really found interesting is one of the principal of Gulu High School, just in a conversation, as an offhanded remark, said, well, when you are making good money, all the relatives and friends expect you to lend them money, except when they say lend you money, they really don't intend to pay you back, and you know that they're not going to pay you back. So it's because it's again, it's part of a culture in which you support the family, and if you are doing well, then it's expected of you to share that good fortune. And so I'm hoping I answered your questions.
And how did you choose the?
Oh, how did I choose?
Choose,
Look, for instance, when I made when I was inundated with all the women who wanted to be photographed, more than half, I wouldn't have chosen to be photographed for different reasons. I could have photographed somebody, for instance, that was selling tomatoes, but suddenly I have a half a dozen women who are also selling tomatoes. You know, or I just couldn't connect with them as, you know, as I'm shooting. I mean, it was all these kind of subtle and overt things that were happening that made me decide which, you know, who I was going to print and who I wasn't.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What I was going to ask you, Dan, was about, you said the infrastructure there is pretty rough or primitive, I guess would be a correct way of putting it. However, yeah, everywhere I was looking, there was no such thing as paved. It was all earth, dirt. What is it like there? What is it like there during the rainy season?
Well, well, I'll tell you, what can look to you like a dirt road could really be a paved highway that is just covered with the dust from that's on the side of the road. Okay, that's one thing. In rainy season, you get a lot of very flooded areas that are really difficult to maneuver in. And I remember one particular spot in Kampala where suddenly the road went down and then back up again, and it drained, and it was like about 4 feet of water because of the lack of drainage. And between the potholes and the boater drivers trying to go through that 4 feet of water, and engines getting flooded because of water getting into them. It's what people are dealing with on a daily basis. You know, it's not unlike having to, the way New Yorkers have to, when you're going to Times Square, you're going to be inundated with people, and you're going to have to maneuver through thousands of people as you're going from point A to point B. It's amazing what you can get accustomed to when you deal with it on a regular basis. And the Ugandans are very good at trying to maneuver within the limitations, you know, that is afforded them.
Good, thank you. David Simone, you had your hand up quite a bit. Were you just waving at your wife, or you had something you wanted to ask?
Well, I don't know. What I did want to mention, Dan, is I know my friend Ken Goyer, and Susie knows Ken also. She's probably talked to you about him. Started a program called nonprofit called Aid Africa, and was in Uganda.
Yeah, she did.
And yes, and you know, it's just ever since I saw his work there and the photographs. You know, he didn't have anybody that was extremely good at photography there, but, you know, had photographs of it, and the work he was doing was exceptional. And I just want to shout out to all the NGOs and all the people that are trying to help over there. We just have so much and are so fortunate here. Sharing with the world is really the way to go.
No, that's true.
So.
And listen, when Susie mentioned it and I Googled it, and I was really impressed by what he was able to accomplish. It was just wonderful. And the fact that they're still being used.
Yeah. It's being carried on from a man and a bunch of people in Los Angeles area. And it's, you know, they're doing such good work. So, and thank you for your work over there exposing that. Though I haven't seen the exhibit yet, but I'm really going to make it down there. I love what you did with the mosquito netting and the translucency of it. Really very beautiful. That's
thank you.
Brilliant kind of
way.
Yeah,
It's great when you have an idea and you see it really working.
Yeah.
In the way you envisioned it, as opposed so often happens, oh God, it's not, okay, it's not as good as I thought it was going to be.
right, right.
You just make another trip over to Uganda, that's all.
On one of Ken's trips to Gulu, he realized that the medical school didn't have one microscope. And so he approached our hospital because we were changing campuses and they weren't going to take any of the microscopes from one location to the other. And he was able to secure a large number of microscopes and take them to the Gulu Medical Hospital Teaching Center Medical School. But they had nothing.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, listen, the same in terms with Sandra and Oysters and Pearls. I mean, she's the one that brings in all the computers. She's, the one that has, every time she travels, she's got 12 trunk loads of stuff that she transports, to fill in the supplies because they're just not available in Uganda. From paper clips, even paper clips. I mean, I bought a bunch of paper clips at the store, and again, it's all made in China. And trying to put two pieces of paper together, the paper clip snapped.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So let's see. Anybody else? We don't have anybody unmuted out there. Guy, go ahead.
Oh. Hello, Guy.
Hi, Dan. I just want to say thanks for your presentation. Very interesting. Thanks for the
Thank you.
show. Really impressive. Also want to mention anyone who's local to Eugene, Springfield, that Emerald Arts Center is at 5th and Main, open Wednesday through Saturday, 11 to 4, and the show will be up through March. Yes.
Right.
That's great. Thank you.
So any other questions? It's been a very active question and answer period. Do you have anything else? Anybody? Okay, David, go ahead. Oh, let's do David and then Barbara. Or was
Hi,
that
Dan.
Pat?
Okay. So Dan, what are your plans for, eventual returning there or follow up, or explain that if you would.
Definitely want, like I said in my presentation, I thought that in 2020, I would be going back again. So now it's as soon as we think that we can go, I'm hoping that before the year is over, I can go back one more time, and work with Beatrice on this. Because the thing is that I started doing women who had their own businesses, and I wanted to get more into the teachers and the people. I didn't want to concentrate just on women who are barely making it from a day-to-day economic basis. So I wanted to give a fuller picture of what Ugandan women can accomplish and have accomplished.
Sounds good.
Barbara.
That,
I can't hear you.
yeah, that was my question. What was your next project going to be? So David, he took that.
Yeah, and it's ideally I'd like to get to the point where I can put it together as a book.
Oh, that was, yeah. That would, with the stories, that would be a wonderful book. I wonder if it would make a good children's or above that adolescent, book, because that's history in the making. It's experiential. The textbooks that we have, not so good. So this would be wonderful storytelling.
Oh, it's something to consider, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, David Brown.
Yes, thank you. Wonderful, Dan.
Thank
Hello.
you, David. Good to see you, Christina.
To you, Adele, and to family and friends. It's we're calling from the snowbound Seattle, Washington area. We look forward to seeing the exhibit. As you know, Christina and I and my brother Chris in Bellingham, Washington, will be driving down to see the show, and we really look forward to it.
That's great. Great.
As a Pisces, I have a question regarding the fish farm that you
Yeah.
showed, and who owns that? As most people probably know, Lake Victoria is known for its Nile perch, or as we call it in the US, tilapia.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering who owns that fish farm. We were excited to see that one of the young women that was participating was wearing a life vest.
Yes. The fish farm was founded by the Soul Foundation. And what happened was that the Ugandan government decided to build a couple of dams on the Nile River. And in the process, it flooded a lot of the farmland that was next to the Nile River, which left a lot of families destitute. And so the Soul Foundation came up with this brilliant idea of having a fish farm and having it run predominantly by women. Once, teaching them how to do it. Of course, they had men teaching them how to do it, but once there were enough women who could do it, they were going to be all self-sufficient. They sell the fish in Kampala and in Kenya, and it's great because the women who had farms really like it because they're making more money than they did as farmers.
Okay. You had alluded to the Chinese infrastructure investments there, and I'm curious, are the Chinese employing local labor for that infrastructure, or?
It's what all the supervisors are Chinese, and you can see that as you're driving by because they wear kind of like a traditional Vietnamese straw hat. And I would say about 3/4 of the workers that I've seen tend to be, let's say, whether the Ugandans or not, I can't say for sure, but they are definitely Africans. And I think that the workers are dealing with all the manual labor while the Chinese are dealing with the supervisory load. And there's tensions between the two because the Chinese have segregate themselves from the workers and think that they are superior to the people that they're working with.
Yeah.
So the usual.
And in your photographs, the mosquito netting is a genius.
Thank you.
It's impressive.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Okay, let's see, any more questions? Looks like we're just about wrapping up, Dan. Do you have any last minute comments you'd like to share?
Well, thank you all really for hanging in there for over an hour with me on this Valentine's Day. And thank you for a lot of really good questions and ideas that I can think about in terms of, how to move forward and what to do with this. So thank you all for doing this, for participating.
Mary, you unmuted. Do you have something you wanted to say?
No, just thank you, Dan and Adele, for sharing.
Awesome.
Good to see you, Mary. Thank you.
I've been privileged to see a lot of it. So
yeah,
great. Okay, well, Dan, it's like Guy said, the show's there. It's through February, and we've extended out through March. And so, if you have David has a problem coming down from Seattle until the snow clears, it's still there in March if you can make it.
Great.
And thank you all for joining us. Photography Oregon appreciates it, and we'll let you know the next time we have another show going on. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was
Bye-bye.
wonderful.
Thank you, Dan. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi,
Bye.
Kevin.
Thank you very much. Hi, Adele. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, all.
Bye.
Bye.
A great work from the heart. So it's a great Valentine's Day gift. Thank you so much.
Ciao, ciao, everybody.
Bye-bye.